This is the advanced container gardening class. I don't know when we had the beginner container gardening class, but this is the advanced one. So you guys are all advanced. Isn't that great? So this class is going to be, part of it's just going to be me talking about container gardening, giving you some basic information that you can use to build your container gardens. The second part of the class is for those of you who signed up to put a container garden together, and we will help you do that. Along the way, when I'm talking, if you have a question pertaining to container gardening, I'll be glad to answer that for you. And then I'll be floating around afterwards if there's other questions, and there's a ton of nursery people in their blue aprons. If you have questions, they got good answers for you. So container gardening. Okay, show of hands, how many of you already are container gardening? Quite a few. That's impressive. Prescott, I'm telling you, is a great place to container garden. If you've ever tried to dig in the soil around here, you understand that container gardening is amazing because you're not breaking your back, you're not getting out the jackhammer, you're able to comfortably plant in your pots. I've kind of lost count because I keep adding. Ken says there's about 50 pots at my house. I'm not sure. It's possible. We grow everything. We have a peach tree in a container. We grow several shrubs in containers. We have succulents in containers. We have cactus in containers. So when it comes down to what can you grow in a container, you're pretty much unlimited. You might want to stay away from an Austrian pine or a, spruce, that kind of thing. But even a smaller spruce, you can grow it in a container for quite a while. I mean, eventually, yeah, you're going to want to move it into the yard, but you can grow it for a long time in a container. Anything you grow in a container, you're going to limit its size somewhat because its roots can only reach the end of that pot. So they are just kind of naturally going to stay a little smaller. Like I said, we grow a standard size peach tree in a container. It's a big container. It's probably a little bit bigger than this one right here, but it's never going to get as big, which is fine for us. We don't want that, but I still get a lot of fruit. I get an amazing amount of fruit off of it. So you can grow whatever you want in a container. What it comes down to is container size. So if I want to grow a peach tree, I need to start this around here. Doing my job. If I'm going to grow a peach tree, I'm not going to grow it in this size container, right? I'm going to grow it in something big, so it's got room to root out. If I'm going to grow like a pixie peach or a dwarf peach, you could probably grow it in this size, but it'd probably be a little happier in the bigger size over the long run. Maybe you want to start it out in here and then eventually move it into a bigger pot. So those are options for you in what you grow. You can grow shrubs in pots. You can grow perennials. This is a perennial grass that you could easily throw into a pot in the center or the back of it and grow your annuals around it and change these out whenever you feel like it. But you got this guy in here holding the base for you. So you're not always replanting the entire pot. You're replanting parts of the pot. So in front of my house, I have, I'm going to have to replace them. We had 2 Nandina in the pots by the garage door, and we would just seasonally change out. Like right now I have pansies in them, and then I change out and put calabacoas in them, and I just keep them pretty, full of color, because it's the front of my house, and I want it to look nice when I drive in at the end of the day. The Nandinas bit the dust this winter. I don't know. It was a cold, wet winter, and it was hard on some things. So I'm going to have to replace them. I haven't decided yet what to replace them with. I'm still pondering that one. But we put something big in the center and then just change it out around. So your pot, I love the ceramic pots because they last forever. I literally have had some for 20 years or more, and they do fine. We had a big pot like this in front of our house. When the kids were learning to drive a stick shift, they accidentally ran into it. and cracked it. But you know, that darn thing held together for 5 or 6 years after they had put a crack in it. So the ceramic pots, the heavy ceramic pots, are an investment, but they are worth the investment because they just last and last and last. Most of these are Vietnamese, Chinese, and if you pick them up, if you ever try to move one, very heavy. So put it where you want it and then plant it. But there's a lot of less expensive pottery out there, but it's very thin. And you can tell, if you can lift it really easily, it's a thin pot. It probably will not take our winters as well as the heavier ones. You'll see some cracking, some crazing in it. So, you know, if it's something you really want, make the investment and buy some nice pots. I have a mix. I have some plastic out there because maybe I just want to fill in a spot, so I'll throw a plastic container in. You know, each pot has its use. The wooden ones, I really like the wooden ones. I like the wooden metal that they're coming out with now. I have found that wood in our area, you might get 2-3 years out of it, but that wood just breaks down. Between the sun and the moisture and the heat and the cold and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't hold up as well. So, you know, think about where you want to use your pot, how you're going to use your pot. Is it just going to sit on your porch table? If so, that's fine. Maybe you just need a lightweight pot that you can move around. If it's going to be by your garage and you don't want it disappearing, get a heavy one, because I'll guarantee you nobody's going to steal this pot because they could not move it, especially once it's planted. In your pots, make sure you have good drainage. You want to have drainage in there. Too many people think, oh, I don't, you know, it doesn't matter, maybe one little hole. But you want some good drainage because almost all your plants do not want to sit constantly soggy. You will get root rot in your plants. Once they get rotted, there's no coming back from it. So good drainage is essential. If you don't want them draining onto your patio or your deck, get a good saucer and put a saucer underneath it because it needs to drain. Because when you water your pot, you want to make sure you're watering the entire pot. You know, too many times we're like, oh, I don't want it to get on my patio. Okay, I'm done watering. Well, that's not enough for us here in Arizona. We're very, very dry. You wouldn't know it from this past winter, but you know, in the summer heat, you really need to give a good drink to your plants. You need to saturate the entire root ball. So if you don't want the water getting on your patio, make sure you have a good saucer under there. The other thing I recommend, it makes a big difference, is if you can get either pot feet or a little brick or something just to pop your plants up a little bit so they get a little bit of air circulation underneath the pot. It'll make a big difference for your plants. You can get some rocks from your yard, a little piece of wood, a brick, anything, because you're probably not going to really see it because you're just going to kind of stick it underneath. So that you just get a little bit of air circulation. It makes a big difference for the health of your plants. So any questions on that?
Put rocks in the bottom of the pot before you put the dirt in? Does that help drainage?
Not really. I know. And you know, and I don't know where that got started from. It's like one of those old wives' tales that got started. Not really, because actually they have found the water adheres, the molecules adhere to the rocks. So you actually end up with a really heavy pot that's hard to move, and it really is not of benefit to you. So I don't recommend it.
So if you have a really big pot or a urn size thing, it's better just to put all, because I always put like this much tan bark or something
Okay.
at the bottom just so I don't have
Yeah.
to use all mine.
So her question is, so say she has a really big pot this size, and her question is, do I need to fill the whole thing with potting soil, or can I do something, bark or something in the bottom to kind of fill that bottom part? And my answer to that is, it depends on what you're putting in it. Now, if I'm planting my peach tree in this, I want all soil. I want those roots to have a place to go. If I'm just going to plant some summer geraniums and things that are only going to live through the summer and then they're done, sure, you can do that. You can put a false bottom. Some people use like empty soda bottles, you know, the plastic bottles. And you can see in this one, I just turned a pot upside down, which you could easily do. Turn it upside down, that's filling some space in there, so you're not having to use all potting soil. But if you're doing a shrub, a perennial, or a tree, just do all potting soil. It's better in the long run. But yeah, in these big pots, you can create some false bottoms to them. Yes, ma'am?
When you talk about putting a piece of wood or a brick or something on the bottom so that air can get to it, wouldn't that be covering the hole if you're putting something there? So
Well, it depends on where your hole is. So if your hole's right in the center, maybe you want 2 little bricks or something underneath to kind of prop it up.
But that's where you want the air to get, right, at the hole?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So depending upon where your drainage hole is, sometimes they're right in the center, sometimes they're at the sides, just depends on where it is. So then we get to soil. So soil is one of those things that I think, I don't know how to put this delicately. People want to buy inexpensive soil, and there's certainly inexpensive soil out there. You can go and buy a huge bag of soil, you know, for like $5. You can certainly do that. I'm going to push our potting soil because I love our potting soil. We had it specially designed quite a few years back now. We used to grow. We had a growing operation out in Chino. So we're like, okay, we need a really good potting soil for our area to grow our plants in. So our grower at the time helped us put this soil together, and it's a terrific soil. It's got peat moss in it, it's got some perlite in it. It's a great soil in that you can see how rich it is, nice and rich. It holds water, but it also drains. So it's not going to hold on to that water forever and create a boggy mess, which some of the soils with those moisture control things in them, sometimes I have found that they tend to be really soggy. And that goes back to that root health. If you have a really soggy soil, you're going to have really unhappy roots in your plants. So a really good soil that drains well is essential. So I would say buy a nice soil. There's a huge temptation to go with the cheaper soils, but a good soil makes a big difference in the health of your plants. The other thing is, do not use soil from your yard. We're trying to avoid digging in that soil, right? Because it's icky soil. Don't put it in your pots because most of our soils are really heavy clay, and when it gets wet, it's just, you're going to have a brick, essentially. You could make bricks, I guess, if you wanted to. But don't use your soil from your yard. And a lot of people ask, well, can I use it in the bottom of the pot? And I'm like, you know, just save yourself a headache and don't do it. So I was filling this pot. We have a big tub of our potting soil over here, and I was filling this to get it started. And now I can't find them. They probably went way down in there. But there were actually some earthworms in there. I was like, oh, worms, yay! So it's a good soil. It's got a little of the perlite in it. When you look at it, you might go, oh, there's sticks in there. Well, it's composted. It's got compost in there. But the sticks actually add to that drainage. So it's adding lightness and air and drainage, pocket holes of air pockets in your soil. So a good soil, very, very essential to that. Things that we can add to our soil when we're making our pot even better. So this is our plant food that we've put together. This is an all-natural 744 slow-release food. I always call this the meat and potatoes because this is a food you start with. It's mild enough, you can put it right into your pot to start with. Not going to burn, but it's going to provide your plants food for about 3 months. It's that meaty protein that the plants need to keep going, to survive. So, and it gives you directions down here, how much per container. I don't measure it. It would be really hard to burn. I mean, if I dumped the whole thing in, I probably could. But, you know, reasonable amount. I scatter a little bit in. I do it before I've planted, just because it's easier. So I put it in with my soil mix, and then I just mix it up. So that's the all-purpose food. You probably want to feed with this throughout the season, but you only have to use it maybe once or twice because it feeds for 3 months, right? So that's the all-purpose. I put that in my soil while I'm planting. Yes?
I'm sorry. Is it good to add a couple of worms in your pot?
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you want to put earthworms in your pot, feel free. They'll be happy in there. They'll like that. The other thing I add, these are Aqua Boost crystals. So the Aqua Boost crystals are a polymer that almost act like a self-water almost. So the crystals get water to them and they expand out, and then they just slowly shrink and release water as they go. This time of year, you probably think, I'm fine, but let me guarantee you, come June, you're out there with a hose every day. It can save you a lot of work, and it gives you a little measure of forgiveness. So maybe you went out of town for a day or two. It'll give you that little measure of forgiveness to kind of release that water as you go. So, you know, we all tend to miss a watering at one point or another in our pots. This will help you with that. One word of caution, it gives you directions like teaspoons. Follow that. More is not better. Follow the directions on this one. It also has mycorrhiza in it, which are really terrific for building good root strength. So it's a really good product to use when you're planting out in the yard. If you do any tree planting or anything like the shrubs, this is excellent to put in with that soil as well. The last product, so this is another type of fertilizer. This is a water-soluble fertilizer. Its numbers are 10, 54, 10. So that middle number, that 54, is high phosphorus. High phosphorus helps two ways. It helps with root development, and it helps us produce blooms. So these little plants that we want them to bloom their little hearts out until we're done with them, this will help with that. This you use every 2 weeks. So you're just mixing it up in your water bucket. Every 2 weeks, just water through with it. People, you hear the horse? A lot of people are kind of skeptical about this until they try it. And let me tell you, it does work. I use it religiously in my pots. My pots are almost never out of bloom. So a really good product to have on hand for those pretty pots. Yes, ma'am? Yes. So say you have roses or salvia or something that you're like, dang it, that should be blooming. Why is it just sitting there looking at me? Giving it a shot of the high phosphorus will kick it into bloom.
What's its name again?
Flower Power. Great name. Anyway, so, okay, that's the fertilizer. So quickly, like I said, when it comes to building your pot, you got options. If you're doing a great big pot, start with big flowers, because I'm starting with something big because it's going to help me fill that pot. If I start this pot and I start with this, how many plants is that going to take me to fill that pot? It's going to take me forever. And it just doesn't say much, right? It's just like, So start with something big. This is a Uri Ox Daisy. This will bloom all season long, loves the sun. You do have to deadhead, so when the blossoms start to fade, you just pop the blossoms off, and it'll shoot off more blossom. It is not winter hardy, but it's great summer for the color. Other option, if you wanted something big, this is a variety of quarterline. They also come in greens. You get some that are really dark purple color. Just really pretty in a pot, and they mix nicely with other color. They love geraniums and the quarterline are a really good combo. Works nicely together. This is probably not going to want full hot sun. Afternoon shade or filtered light, it'd be really happy with. I thought this was the year I'm going to get one to winter over, because I had a beautiful one in a pot. Well, after the 2 feet of snow, it's like, oh no, that's not going to winter over. But just really, I love the color in the leaves. I love the texture of the leaves, just the openness and the airiness, and when the breeze blows on it, it's really, really nice. But it is not winter hardy. If I wanted something that was going to be truly winter hardy, I could do a little pine. I'd probably want a bigger one. This one's probably great for this size pot, not so great for this size pot, right? Kind of gets lost. But you could do, this is an Alberta Spruce. Oh, they grow so slow. So they do terrific in pots because they're not going to overgrow anytime soon. Very, very, like less than a ½ inch a year growth on it. So it's great for containers because you're not going to have to change it out very often. If I wanted a perennial grass, I like the grass, but I want something more perennial. This is a Muhlenbergia. So I could put a Muhlenbergia grass in there. It's going to come back year after year after year. Probably like February, I'm just going to cut it off, and it'll start growing back up again in March. I have a lot of grasses in my pots. I really just like the way the wind blows on them. The other thing I like is they start to bloom late summer, early fall. So it's a really cool pop of color when some of your other stuff is just like tired. This kind of gives you that another pop of color out there. Easy to use grasses in pots. So yeah, the bigger the pot, start with the bigger sizes. Otherwise, you're going to be popping a lot of little flowers in there. This size pot, I like this size pot. It's a really easy one to fill. It's not so big that it's going to take you forever to get it full. And you can move this size of pot pretty easily around your yard. So I like this. I have a lot of this kind of size pot on my patio by my front going out. There again, it's big enough I could grow a perennial in there if I wanted to. This one is autumn sage, Salvia Greggy. It's another perennial. This one, hummingbirds love this one. Yeah. It comes in different colors. It has there's a purple one out now, a pink, a white, an orange. I think there's even a blue one. So this would be a nice perennial I could throw in here. It's going to come back year after year after year. It's going to go dormant in the wintertime. It's going to be sticks in a bucket. But you know, a lot of times we're not out that much in the wintertime that we even really care. It's the summer that we care about. But at least you're having this in your center. You're not have to replacing it all the time. But you could easily plant around it. You could put some Snapdragons in with it. The other great thing about this one is it is it's animal proof. So if you have javelina, if you have bunnies, Salvia is a great plant to put in because they just kind of leave it alone for the most part. Snapdragons are another really good one I'm sorry if I'm whistling. I think I'll move that. I think that's irritating. There we go. Snapdragons are another good animal-resistant plant. So I know a lot of you guys deal with animals, from rabbits to javelina to deer. If you have those guys in your yard, put in plants that you know they're not going to like. Because if I put in an ornamental cabbage and I've got deer and javelina, it won't last you one night and it'll be gone. Trust me. Yeah, it will not last, you know. So if you have those kind of concerns, ask someone about what you're putting together. Another great one for animal resistant is just herbs. Most of your critters do not like herbs and they'll leave them alone. This is not winter hardy either, but it's a really cool plant. So this is the bay laurel. So you could put that in the center and then put some of your herbs around it. It'd be really pretty. You could put some strawberries in there as well on the edge, and that's going to drape over the edge and soften the edge. Yes, ma'am.
Talking about animals, I have chipmunk problem, really bad chipmunk problem, and they dig my pots. So what can you suggest to keep them from digging in my pots?
Chipmunks are hard. Chipmunks, pack rats, squirrels, get a cat, get a dog. They're tough because they're not necessarily eating the plants. They're just digging and messing with you and, you know, laughing at you while you're at the window. Some repellents work. Sometimes people have put like pine cones and things like that on the soil to kind of help just discourage them. Most of your animals are very habitual, so if you can kind of discourage them for a while, then they go, yeah, I'm not going to mess with that. I'll go over to the neighbor's house and mess with their stuff. So if you can just make it hard for them, some people have even taken like, and it's harder to do, but chicken wire over the top, and then they pop, cut holes and pop their plants in. You have to get creative. When you've got pack rats and those kind of guys, they're just don't like pack rats. Oh, these things are mean. So you can use herbs for bunnies, javelina, deer, put an herb pot together. So this was my thought on this one. I was going to put the bay laurel in the center. I was going to put some herbs in. I have English thyme, oregano, some chives. This is a sage, a variegated sage. I love this sage, so pretty. And the nice thing about a lot of these is they are perennial. They're going to come back year after year. These are bull's blood beets. Say that 3 times fast. But I love the color on them. Yes, it's a bull's blood beet. But I like the color because that's a hard color to find, but it helps things pop. So, throwing a few of those in there. Now the critters might want to eat those, but my hope is my oregano and my sage are going to discourage them enough that they'll leave it alone. But just popping a few of those in there. It's like, how do you create a pot without creating a pot? So you can be creative and use, these are edibles, but they're kind of fun to flow in there. If you do a lot of juicing or veggie, making shakes, those are really good for that too. Let's say, I like that, but I want a little more color. Sure.
I've never attempted to do a lot of plants in a pot because I think you have to match the water.
You do. So her question is, do you want to match the watering? And yes. So all of these plants will be really similar in their watering. I wouldn't want to take a yucca and match it with, some alyssum, because they have 2 different watering needs, right? I wouldn't take a cactus and something that, petunia, and mix it. So you want to stay with things that have the same watering needs and also the same sun needs. You don't want to take, plants that need shade, group those plants together. Plants that like sun, group those plants together. The only thing I found that's a little different is, because ivy's more of a shade plant here, I have found that if I put ivy at the bottom of a pot with taller stuff around it, so if I had that there, this tends to shade the ivy enough that it keeps it going. Now ivy can be a bit aggressive, so occasionally you have to go through and just kind of yank parts of it out, but it really softens the edge of a pot. So you can create a false shade, but yes, you're correct. More often, you want to keep like needs together, sun, water, that type of thing. So I just want to show you real quick. I'm going to do this. I'm going to move this big one out of the way because it's big. Those pots are heavy. Okay, so I'm just going to put one together real quick for you and just kind of give you some basics. Usually when I start my pot, I put soil in there to begin with, about 2/3 of the way up. That gives me a base to build with. So if you put your soil about 2/3 of the way up, when you start picking out your plants to go in there, it's going to give you a base so you can see what looks good. This is a Snapdragon that I just broke part of. Oh well, it'll grow back. So when you pull your plants out of their pots, they're going to look like this. The roots are going to be, you're going to have a lot of roots at the bottom usually. They're going to be tight because they've been growing in that pot. So when you get your plants out of the pots, you want to loosen the root structure. Tickle the roots, maul the roots, whatever you want to call it. You want to loosen it up. I usually will take the bottom and actually pull it off because those roots are pretty thick down there. So you're loosening up your root ball, getting it ready so that those roots want to grow out and not just around itself. You can put a tall thing in the center. That's what they used to call a thrill. You put your big thing in the center. You say, I'm going to put this pot in the corner. I'm not going to see the back. Well, then I can put my tall thing in the back. Gives me a little more room out front here to put more flowers in. So I'm going to kind of pop that in there. You want your plants to be, inch from the top, that top layer, because you want to be able to water it without the soil going poof, flying out all the time. So now that I think about it, I'm like, I'm tired of dirt under my nails. I'm going to put gloves on. You can see how that went. But if I had thought about it, it's too late now. These are just those little like nitrile gloves, or and I like them because you can still feel the plant and the roots. Sometimes when you get those really thick gloves, you just can't feel anything. And of course, half the time I don't wear anything at all. So I'm going to start with my Snapdragon. And then I want something that's going to kind of fill the space between my thriller and my spiller. So I chose, these are Dianthus. Dianthus are kind of cool. And actually Snapdragons too. They're more or less what we call a biennial. So they will come back 2 to 3 years, and then they kind of go, done. Both of these plants are more cool season. So when it's really hot, you may need to move it into a shadier spot to keep it going. But they'll go a long time. So I've got that one all popped. See how I've got my top one, but I'm filling the space in here. And you can see how, those are pretty root bound. So don't be afraid to just go ahead. Right. Don't be afraid to really loosen up the roots on them.
How long does it take for a plant like that to grow in the nursery and get packed roots?
You're usually looking anywhere from 3 months to 6 months, depending upon the variety. So I'm just going to pop them in. I'm not too worried right now about filling the spaces that I know are in there with soil. That's going to be my last step. Right now I'm just kind of playing with it and seeing what I like and what I don't like. Like, what else do I got? I'm going to throw some pansies in here just to kind of help. Ooh, that one's really bad. Now, when I put my pots together, I don't have a lot of empty space in them. I really fill them full with plants because I think a lot of times people think, they'll grow together eventually, and yeah, maybe they will, but how much time do you want to spend watching them grow together, right? You want to enjoy your pot right now. So yeah, I usually go with, you see a lot of what I'm using is gallon and 4-inch size. And I do that because a couple of reasons. One, they have a stronger root system. They're going to hold up better because they got a bigger root than, look at this guy compared to this guy. Who's going to be healthier to start with? This guy. Do these guys have a place? They do, and I'll show you that. But when you're looking for some size, some filler, some bright color, go with the bigger size. Definitely going to fill faster. Maybe I want, now Dusty Miller doesn't, well, it blooms, but you don't really want it for its bloom. You want it more for its texture, its color. So I could pop a few of those guys in there. That's where your 4-inch has a place, or your 6-packs have a place. is when you're just trying to add little pops of color or a little texture or something different in there. You got a little hole you need to fill. You can pop some of those in there. So now maybe I want something to soften the edge of my pot, your spiller, as they call it. So this is alyssum. I could certainly use that. I also have here Lobularia. Lobularia is one of my favorite ones. Lobularia is like alyssum. They're kind of in that same family, but they're much hardier. They can take a lot more sun, and they drape a lot more than alyssum does. They have a lot more spill to them. Lobularia comes in this purple one. You see the white one right there in front of that big blue pot? Yeah. Yeah, this is the white one. And I always put this on the edge of my pots just because I love the way it spills down. It is so pretty and so hardy. This lasted through November in my pots. This was still growing and growing strong. I have one of these in a pot that's actually wintered over this winter. It was a little protected by other things, but when I was cleaning out my pots, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's my Lobularia. So I think it's gonna, grow and be pretty again. It's pretty resistant, not 100%, but pretty resistant. But I'm going to put that on my edge, and that's just going to continue to grow down. It'll be really pretty. Now I can't really see this from this angle. But kind of thank you. The technique is kind of that thriller, that tall something in the middle, something to fill that space, your filler that's filling the space between your top and your spillers. The spillers just soften the edge. They make it more attractive. Do you have to have it? No. But I think it really adds a lot to the pot in the beauty of it. So once you've kind of got them all situated and you kind of figure where you want them, yes ma'am? You got to make me spell it. Lobularia. Yeah. Lobularia. I'll have the tag up here later if you guys want it. So once I've got everything positioned where I want it to be, that's when you start filling the holes. So you've got everything positioned, but if you start sticking your hands in there, you've got little holes in there. You need to fill that up. That's usually where I'll take, there again, I should probably use something different, but I take my hand and push it in, because that way I can feel where the holes are. So you're just kind of, is it messy? Yes, it's messy. I've never figured out a really tidy way to do this. You're just kind of filling in where you know that there's holes in there, little pockets. I pack it, putting some pressure on it, but I'm not packing it so hard that there's no oxygen or anything left in there, but packing it enough that I'm not feeling any deep holes. Once you think you've got it pretty well packed in there, what you want to do is take your watering can and lightly water it. Because once you add water to that soil, it is going to shrink down a little bit. So once I've let the water flow through it, I know it's pretty well through, I'll go through again and feel for pockets, and kind of then put more of the soil in there to kind of fill it up. You can fill your pots a little fuller to begin with, because that soil over time is going to compact down more. And you don't want to, someday you'll go out to your pot and there's like this much room. So kind of overfill it a little bit to begin with, not too much. And then after you've watered it all in, you just get to sit back with your iced tea or whatever you got, your adult beverage. And they add so much to your patios, to your driveway, your entranceways, and so easy to grow. And there really isn't a lot of rules. Everybody goes, well, what colors go together? I'm like, well, what colors do you like? There's no rhyme or reason. It's what you like. And so many people go, oh, I can't do that, or I'm afraid. You just got to start. You just start container gardening, and it can become a passion. It's just so easy to do and so rewarding. In El Paso, I was with my oldest grandson. He's 8. He loves plants. He loves Pop Pop's nursery. But we bought a bunch of herbs because his mom likes to cook. So we bought a bunch of herbs and we put a container together, and we had so much fun. It was just a joy. He's so funny because he doesn't like dirt, you know, and I had my hands like, I'm like, Christopher, come kiss me. He's like, oh. But you know, how good is it for us to be in the dirt, for our kids to be in the dirt? Being outside and touching dirt, touching flowers does so much for your mental abilities, just the cognitive, your enjoyment in life. I love to go out in the summer. I go out and I deadhead my flowers with my coffee, and I'm out there, and I enjoy that. It gives me peace. So there's a lot more to just container gardening than pretty things. It's a very good mental stimulant for you all. So I know you got questions, but I don't want to go too long because we have people putting the container together. So those of you who are going to put a container together, just hang out for a few minutes. We're going to clear this off, and then we're going to get your containers for you and help you get started. But I will answer, you had a question. Window boxes. It kind of comes, you just need to come in and talk with a person because the thing with window boxes is they tend to dry out quickly. That's where, I lost everything. That's where the Aqua Boost crystals make a huge difference because it's not going to dry out as quickly. The other thing people ask me about a lot is the cocoa liner. I'm not a big fan of cocoa liner here. It just dries out so fast. Another good option to use is actually burlap. You do the burlap around the edge, then you line it with plastic, like a trash bag, poke some holes in it so you have drainage, but that works better than the cocoa liner. Cocoa liner, I don't like it. Yes? Right. Here. So Prescott proper USDA zone, we're a zone 6B to 7. If you're up in Groom Creek, you're probably like us 5 to 6. It's a lot colder. If you're down in Dewey, you're more like an 8. So you want to be in that 6 to 7 range. Some 8s do really well. Salvia is a zone 8, but it does really well here. But yeah, you want it in that 6 to 7 to 8 possibly range. Yeah, and if you're not sure, ask. Feel free to ask somebody. Yes?
Do you have any suggestions on if you want to put together an herb garden in your kitchen?
Same thing applies. That's all the same things we talked about. Your soil, your pot, drainage, all those are hugely important. A bright kitchen. You need a bright light. If you're growing herbs inside, bright lights, bright room is essential. Yeah. So I'm going to let you guys go. Like I said, those of you that are putting the container together, hang on for a few seconds. If you have questions, I'll be floating around.